Well, our theme is picnic. I like to at storytelling arts and sponsored by my co-organizer. And our media sponsor is WFYI. Listen, you know the rules, right? It's supposed to be a true story. Now, if we don't see nose grow, how will we know? You are not allowed to have any notes. It should not be longer than 5 minutes. But go on to tell for 10 minutes if you want to. We'll be looking at the judges as they mark you off. We also have a timer. When you get to 4 minutes, our timer will let you know. Here's our timer. And if you brought notes, eat them now. Because you can't use them, okay? I'd like to thank our judges tonight. I'd like to thank our timers and our scorekeepers. We have a lime green basket that I didn't bring with me. But you know this lime green basket, right? It's a famous basket. And I want you to know that you're going to sit there and think, oh, I don't have a story to tell. But you know what's going to happen, right? As soon as you hear someone else's story, it's going to remind you of a story or something that happened to you. And you're going to come right on up here with no rehearsal whatsoever. And you're going to tell us that story. Now, picnic. I am an expert on picnic. And I'm not an outdoor girl, so you know it's good to go to a picnic outside if you're an indoor girl. So my idea of communing with nature is from inside a glass enclosed air conditioned Holiday Inn. But as a child, I was like the only girl on the block. And you knew our house because it was the only house where there was a patch of dirt where the lawn should be. And every once in a while, we would collect our money. People talk about allowance. I said, allowance? What in the world is that? At any rate, we would gather money. Milk jugs. Back in the day, you could take a milk jug for money. Bottles of pop. We gathered every child in the neighborhood went to sofas, pocket, their parents' purse. So we collected all the money, and maybe about me and 8 boys would trace to Yates grocery store. And they would wait outside while I went inside to get the goodies for the picnic. Cheese, whiz, and crackers. We had a fine palate back in those days. Kool-Aid, but nothing like Kool-Aid. You ask a child now what flavor Kool-Aid is it, and they will say red. Yeah. I laughed at a little boy at the grocery store the other day. He said he had red Kool-Aid. But you had to fix it just right. You had to put just like half a bag of sugar in. Your mother came home trying to make a cake. There was no sugar left. But we had good cookies. We had cookies. We had candy. And my grandmother had given us a quilt. We spread that quilt out over the grass that was left. And we sat down and had the best bread you ever wanted to eat. And that's how I started catering picnics. But I'm gonna keep this this lime green basket. And I'm gonna pull out somebody's name. I'm mixing it all up. Most people have done it 4 or 5 times. One of these is wet. But our first color is favorite. No view. There is a picnic table involved in it. So my wife and I decided to go camping. Although she was not my wife, and it was 40 years. And we drove for 21 hours to the Florida Keys with windsurfers on top and snorkeling bags inside. And we had made reservations at different state parks. And the first one we drove into and drove to our campsite, and it looked like a gravel parking lot in Greenwood. I said, no, we're not staying here. I wanted to do that half-hour drive. Could have done it. So we drove to the next one and said, can we see the campsite? They said, absolutely not. You're gonna love it. And we trusted them. And we pulled in under palm and pine trees with the water 20 feet from our picnic table. The view was incredible. And then the wind started blowing right up to our tent up. We put the tent up next to the picnic table, and it got dark. And they predicted 40-mile-an-hour winds, and they were right. I did not know that there was such a thing as sand state. We had horrible wind. So we just stuck those little spikes in the went to bed, and I lay like this. And in the morning, our neighbor's tent was out in the lawn. Now, luckily, the key starts out at about this deep and goes to this deep, 400 yards out. You never get in water over your head, or we didn't. So we got up in the morning and windsurfed the greatest and fastest we'd ever done. And then we had our picnic, which involved sitting at the table, so tired we could barely hold our heads up. They butter and jelly sandwiches, and an orange. My way to eat an orange, and you get a knife, and you put a hole around the skin, and then you squeeze it into your mouth, sideways, and squeeze it into your mouth until you finish with it, and then you rip it apart, and it's cold. And that is the only way to eat your two. After that, we went surf again, and then we went back to shower, got dressed, and after we back something again. We did that for 5 days. And after that storm, we went out for walks. What was in the tide pool? Place where tide pool crab food. I've never seen it like it, and I never will. There was a boy here. There were octopus with young ones. There were crabs and crabs that I've never seen before. In each of those tide pools, there were tropical fish with multicolors. There was a lobster. All of this in tide pool, and of course there were egrets and brown pelicans all over the place. Right. And I know this because we came back 2 years later and the tide pool were all empty. And there was nothing this after the pool. All these wonderful things. It was incredible. But each day we went to that picnic table and looked out at the ocean and tried to snorkel out there. And we asked the guy, can we find some coral reefs if I win? He said, sure. He said,
And then he said, "You got little teeth out there?" Yeah. And he goes, "You need to windsurf out before that." He said, "Be careful when you hit that red area halfway. Try not to hit like the shark. They don't like that." And so we didn't go snorkeling. I wouldn't go there now. So that's my experience with camping and picnicking. Which really didn't have to fix anything unless all the spread of people.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I need to go picnicking with you.
Yeah.
Here, there was a first energy crisis. I was in college, and I already told my friend who lived in the Bahamas that I was going home with her for Christmas. And so I told my mother and father that I was going to the Bahamas for Christmas. They said, "You're all right." So I saved my money, got my plane ticket, and I joined my friend Kevin as she went home for Christmas break. Now, this was the first energy crisis, and we had a month and a half. They closed our school for the energy crisis. Well, we had a good time. Did all the partying in Nassau during Christmas season, left and went to the island of Napa for New Year's Eve. And we didn't even go out till midnight. The blind green basket is kind of escaped. And we went out to the, they didn't call it the outback. But we went out, it was the brush. And they were there to hunt wild boar. And they fished and caught the fish and grilled it right there on the beach. That was a real picnic. Haven't done it since. But that's all right. Now I know what a picnic is. Now, I'm going to reach into this line green basket. That's something else. Oh,
Look out.
now, like I said, if you remember, something jobs your great sale. Fill out a slip. Got them right over there. Got a pen. You can put your name right in the library basket with the rest. I'm going to reach inside. Mix it all up. You have one that's wet. Leave it in there. I think we'll drink it still. Robert. Uh-oh. Good one. Gently. Come on down.
About 2 weeks into my freshman year of high school, I started seeing audition notices for the fall play, Picnic by William Indy. And I had planned to try out. Now, not to toot my own horn, but in grade school, I had been kind of a big deal in the drama department. But this was the big time. This was high school theater. And I don't remember a thing about auditions except that I was called back for the romantic female lead Madge. And the only other person reading for the part of Madge was the senior named Sarah. And Sarah had been in all the shows, and she was the most beautiful girl in the school. She dated the varsity. And at callback, I was making this senior thespian nervous. After I read for a scene, I sat down and I saw her looking unhappily at her friends, and I heard one of them I saw them lean over and say, "Don't worry, you're so much prettier than she is." I know that now I realize that in that moment I probably should have been insulted, but I was ecstatic. It was like these seniors were saying, yeah, this freshman is super talented, but you look the part. And even then, as a freshman, I knew I would rather have talent than luck. So I left fall back knowing that I had gotten that. This was the break, the big break I had been waiting for my whole life, all 14 years ago. Today, Bishop Chatard, tomorrow, Broadway. I suffered through the whole next day of classes, and when the final bell rang, I ran to the theater door to find the class outside it. And next, at the very top, next to the name Matt, was the name Sarah. And I had to reread it a couple times because I was sure there'd been some kind of mistake. I started at the top and worked my way down. I wasn't cast as Madge. I wasn't cast as Madge's sister Millie. I wasn't even cast as a townsperson like Helen Potts. My name was at the very bottom of the list. I had been cast as the voice of Helen Potts' mother. So I went home in tears, and my mom tried to convince me that there are no small parts, just small actors, but I wasn't having it. I knew that my part wasn't just small, it was minuscule. It consisted of sitting off stage and yelling, Helen, Helen, 4 times. Any cast member who had been off stage at the time could have done my part. Any crew member in the wings could have done my part. Any recording could have done my part. But instead, I sat through hour after hour of rehearsal, sitting through blocking, though I had none, watching the other actors struggle to go off book. Well, I hadn't even been given a script. But then open night came, and something remarkable happened. I got a laugh. The script described my role as an aged and quivering voice that still retains its command. And I interpreted that this way. Helen! Helen! I just laughed. And each time I said it, each of the 4 times, I laughed harder. And by the end of that show, I had fallen in love with theater. I went on to perform in every show at Bishop Chatard, and sometimes I was cast as the lead, and sometimes I was cast as a townsperson. And I went on to major in theater. And when I came back to teach at Bishop Chatard, I got to help with some of the fall plays. And I inevitably, whenever that student was disappointed by the cast list, it was usually a freshman, I tried to remind him or her that the size of the part really didn't matter. What mattered was how much of their part they took.
I'm gonna remember that. Well, I remember saying, oh, yeah. That's all I can tell you. There was a show called, I was one of my goodies. And my mother came, and that was one of the leads. And my mother, we were walking around barefoot on the stage all day. And all my mother could remember was that my feet were dirty. So, at least you got it. Listen, you might want to carve out some time for tomorrow night. Conversations with Freetown Village down at Indiana and Mark. It starts at 6 o'clock. We appreciate it. You would register. And the topic is about philanthropy, female philanthropy. I'll tell you more about it as evening goes on, but even though it's a free program, they'd appreciate it if you would register. So go to www.freetownvillage.org and find out everything you need to know. Listen, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I've been on the picnic. It's not too late. Even though I'm going to reach into this line, bring back, and pull out another name. We got plenty of time to get some more stories. But right now, with all the biggies coming up now. Chat, black.
Years ago, when I was living in Detroit, I got invited to a picnic that was held in a big park, not too far away. And there were, I don't know, 40 or 50 people there, not all locals, not all people I knew. There was a couple there that I remember came up from Ohio. And it's long enough ago, I don't remember either of their names anymore, but I do remember Daphne, who came with them. Daphne was their young python. I've been saying she all along, and only yesterday did I go and look up pythons and make sure they are one of the varieties of snakes that do come in P and P time. They do. And now I know things about how to tell a he from a she that I will never unsee. No picnic for the snake. I'm just going to keep saying she on the theory that whoever named her Daphne got it right. And she was the kind of free spirit you could count on to do just what Daphne liked and just when Daphne liked it. A lot of that could be summed up as looking for things that were warmer than she was. There was some drumming that went on at this picnic. People had brought a bunch of hand drums, various sizes, styles. When those weren't being used, they were kind of standing in the grass with the sun shining on them. And as far as Daphne was concerned, a nice brown skinned drum head that's been in the sun for an hour or two must have been put there just for her. To like climb up and coil real tight on the top of and look all pretty. And then when she soaked up all the warmth out of that, or maybe the sun, that one wasn't in the sun anymore, you find out back on the field. And when the sun got a little lower later on, he got extra sociable. Couldn't count on those drum heads being so warm anymore, but the people still were. We were all by then, we were kind of sitting around in a like big circle. So she could just visit everybody by gliding along from shoulder to shoulder. And she was long enough, she could visit like 2 or 3 people. She came and visited me and the woman sitting to my right. We ended up sitting side by side. Kind of surprised me when she started squeezing Daphne. Started squeezing us together, shoulder by the shoulders. And, I didn't think Daphne had any serious intention of squishing us and eating us. I think it was more like it had been a pretty nice day and we were warm and she was feeling kind of good. Feeling kind of good, and it comes out through your movement, through doing the things that your body does well, and squeezing was something Daphne's body well. So it turned out the woman to my right was Val, and she had not come from as far as some of the others. In fact, we were kind of not bad driving distance from each other. We figured all this out during the conversation that we struck up to pass the time until Daphne got some other idea besides squashing us ribcage to ribcage. And then after that picnic, we did see a little more of each other from after the night that we discussed. Until she finally landed that job out of state that she did look about. Daphne, I think, was well enough provided for. She hadn't seriously thought of it. I never did see her again after that one time. But, anytime it comes up how Valentine now, Daphne is the star of that star.
Who knew a snake could be matchmaking? I might have been going through this all wrong, you know. Well, might want to start preparing now for next month. It's called chaos. How I propose. I'll tell you a little bit more about where the location is. We'll be at Grand Junction Brewing Company at 181st and Meridian Street in Westfield. And if you can think of somewhere you want us to go and be hosted, a nice, quiet, food setting like this, let us know. We'll give it a try. I don't know if we want to come to Lafayette. Maybe they do. Okay. I never say no. But right now, I'm going to reach to the side green basket. Wiggle everything around. Pull out the name of. Yeah. I want to say it's 10 is a ruler, Raider. Welcome.
First time up here.
All right.
So the topic picnic reminded me of going to my grandparents' house. In Amber house. Anyway, my dad told me that when he was growing up on that farm, that they would eat like that 3 times a week. These huge trees, but it was because they were doing things like mowing grass and making hay and feed stuff. It ate 6,000 calories a day back then. It's because you burned 6,000 calories. But we ate like that once a year. So, and then I was feeling bad, and Dad said, "Oh, what you do, boy, founder yourself? What is that?" And he had to explain it. See, if a cow is designed to eat grass. If they eat the wrong thing, like corn, they get an upset stomach, like you would not believe. They fall over, and you have to like, get a knife to them and let the gas down. Anyway, I thought that was kind of. I asked him about the fermentation process because I thought the cow would get from. Turns out, no, it's the lack of ability to breathe because of an enormous amount of gas. So years later, we moved to that farm, Grandma's house, and seeing that I was up to no good, they contacted me with a veterinarian, and it was a lot of fun. I learned so many things, and there was a call coming that the cows were all dead. So they sent the intern doctor out. It was an easy fix. Honest to God, you take a penknife and you stab them just about here, and it's just gas. Now, I was not on this call. The man who owned the farm was Walton, and his son, the name David, was called John Boy because. Now, I heard the story from him that the doctor came out and the cows were laying down like a cartoon character. They've been in and legs in the air and very miserable cows. And he did the appropriate thing, Dad's story didn't involve sterilization, but the doctor did that. And then stabs him, and the cow starts feeling better. He gets talking with Mr. Walton. And, well, what kind of gas is that? Yeah, it turns out it's methane gas. Methane gas, you say. That was like, the answer is yes. Why, that's flammable. I said, watch this. So, now, I was trying to move around, and he's feeling better. Oh, thank you very much. Fire! And now, cows have very few responses to life. When threatened, they head for the barn. And if one cow gets scared, all cows get scared and head for the barn. Which, this was a fabulous old barn built probably just after the Civil War or something. Wood, all full of hay. And, yeah, it went up like that. Lost the herd. Goes back in, he's all smoldering. He's looking very unhappy. That was his last day of feedback. Now, he did have a fallback, but was also skilled in aviation management. I appreciate your time.
The things we do for amusement. Thank you so much. That was hilarious. I can't believe it. I'd like to tell you that on June 24th from 7:30 to 9 p.m., hear our stories, the life and afterlife of incarceration will be at First Friends Church on 3030 Tesla Boulevard, East Drive, here in Indianapolis. And the storyteller will be Hear Our Stories regular, Charles Hack. So put that on the calendar, okay? June.
July.
It's not my church. I know it's July. It's July.
Well, it's July. We got past June. No.
Yeah.
Missed that month. Okay, I'm only reading my notes. I got these notes, that's what they say. Okay. All right. You also might want to know that Freetown Village will be presenting at the Field Theater Work of Their Own, Thursday, August 14th, from 8 to 9 p.m., and Saturday, August 16th, from 12:30 to 1 p.m. And the Work of Their Own follows three African-American workers, a seamstress, a carpenter preacher, and Madam C.J. Walker, as they navigate labor, dignity, and self-determination in Reconstruction and early 20th century America. It's a powerful story of freedom, faith, and forging a future. So if you have time, step into a powerful journey through time and work of their own, a thought-provoking performance exploring the lives of African Americans during Reconstruction. But I got this line ring basket for a reason. I'm going to reach inside, get these around. I hope I get the wet one. Nope, missed it. But right now, Head Black is going to tell us the story. A chapter coming from Lafayette to participate.
I don't have.
Okay, hear me, okay? All right, great. All right, when I was a kid, I went camping with my family a lot. And at our camping time was playing time to get people. Well, most of you don't camp. Now, one of the places we went was called Clubhouse Lake. And it was in a sort of wilderness area, not too far south of the Canadian border. So my mom and dad thought it was a great place. The kids got there and was in the middle of nowhere. And we're going, now what do we do? There's nothing to do here, no camp activities, no horse ride, no miniature golf, nice camp store. What are we gonna do? So we stopped for the first day. After that, got up for breakfast with we were getting us up. So, again, let's go. So we had a nice, warm breakfast and still cold and safe. So we decided we'd step out into the sunshine. I'm always cold. So I got out there and I stood in the sunshine. Fast and it was wonderfully warm sunshine. And I had stood there much more than about what? A minute. And looked around for all these butterflies, all kinds of butterflies. And it came down, surrounded us, and hovered over us. And it was just, wow, wow, that's great. I mean, some of them even landed on it. Wow, that's just a lot of time to get home. Okay, let's go somewhere cool. So let's go down to the lake. And on the way to the lake is a small, not tree line area. And we started that way. We saw all these lovely animals, the chipmunks, squirrels, and rabbits, and a deer. And they didn't run from it. They stayed there and we could almost reach out and touch them. And also had beautiful birds, oh, the finches, and the indigo buzzings, and the oh, so great. But we had to get down there, had to get down the lake. And since we just had breakfast, we couldn't swim, but we could wade. So off goes the top, step into the water. Oh, okay, okay. So I go back 2 steps, and I feel this thing right on the side of my leg. I'm going, oh, that's weird. Jump, 3 feet. One, wait, back. I just go from there. But I go back right. Because you want that one, the other was, and happen again. Coming up against me, I'm going, what is that? So I stand still and look. Well, the water is very clear. So I look down, fish, about this long, and they're rubbing up, they're coming up and nibbling on my leg. Okay, okay. So after I jump in the air, I'm like, get out of here. That lasted about 2 seconds and they were back. And it was also fun when we went swimming later because they swam. So now all our meals at camp would be considered picnics. Oh, breakfast, guess what? One of my favorite times was to have a breakfast. When you could get us out of the camp and get out. Well, my mom and dad said, you don't come, we're gonna eat it. So they fixed the fire, they fixed the food. We kind of had a picnic because they had several courses. Whoever cooked the bacon first, okay, we had bacon. Then we had eggs, we had it. Then we had oatmeal, yes, we had the. Took a while. Took everything, clean. Fine. Finally got to the end of all running. I wanted on a hot mix, so we can stick. So, okay. Got our cup of hot chocolate. Sat him down, that table, my dad set his cup down and said, oh, I got something off his hand. And when he was coming back, he stopped short of his cup. And he shushed the rest of us, be quiet, shut up. And he pointed at the mug. Well, there on the bench had a little gray squirrel. He said, and there's a big old mug, and the little squirrel standing on his hind legs with his front paws sitting on the rim of the cup. And we watched, there is the bench drinking his chop chop. He didn't have no water, but wait, stop. Man, forget it. Man, I can't look at you. I'm glad you come here, but okay. So, I mean, wow, we're all kind of sat there with our mouth up and going, okay. So it's probably the only picnic in our whole life that we quiet.
Got a big fan of squirrels, so I don't know if I get a second. Oh, tree rats.
Oh, this one was that other.
Now, my basket is getting a little low now, so in case y'all thinking of, there's more stories to tell. I know they're out there, I can see them. I had a friend, I tried to talk her into coming tonight, and, she kept saying she didn't have no story to tell. But I know for a fact that she, and her sisters would take their dad back to California, and they would do the cemetery tour. And they would go visit the ancestors, and there was food they would take, and they would sit and picnic and pay homage to the ancestors throughout California. So depending on where the relative was buried, that's where they would go. I had Catherine Wyndham was a great storyteller from Selma, Alabama. And she often talked about growing up in Alabama and how going to the cemetery was a wonderful place to go and have a picnic. It was scenic, the landscape was beautiful, and there was nobody to disturb you. You just took the picnic back and had a good time. So I know some of y'all got one of them stories. But I'm reaching into the lime green basket again. And right now, we're going to hear a story from Stanley. Yay!
So it was 2014, and I was in Haiti doing a 5-week internship with the International Development Bank. This was during my MBA program in Montreal. And after 3 weeks of being there, my wife of 11 years decided to fly down to Haiti from Montreal to spend some time with me. And I, being ever romantic, wanted to plan an unforgettable date for us. And so we took a 45-minute flight, a private plane from Port-au-Prince, Haiti to Cape Haitian in the north part of Haiti. And then when we got there, I hired a fisherman with his boat to take us across the sea to an almost deserted island. I mean, it was magical. Turquoise water, warm sun, just the two of us. And so the fisherman dropped us on the island and went back to shore to bring someone to cook food for us. Because on the way to the island, we were met by fishermen who sold us fresh lobster and crab and fish. It was just a dream date in my mind. So picture this, we're on the island, we're swimming, we're enjoying our time. And then around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my wife says, maybe we should go back. It's starting to get cloudy. And then me being the optimist that I am, I said, well, let's give it some time. Surely it's gonna pass. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I'm thinking we're just gonna be on this island, watch the sunset, and then we'll get on the boat and go back. An hour after she said that, we're racing on the ocean to make it to shore before the storm.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the sky collapsed. And then rain started coming down like a vendetta. I was terrified. It was coming down so heavily, we couldn't see ahead of us. And then this guy is in the boat, is trying to make for land, and there is a boy in the boat with him. He looks like he's 10 years old, and he's just bailing water out of the boat. And then I turned to the sailor and I said, is this normal? He says, yes, happens all the time. And then he turns to the boy and says, faster, faster. I was so scared. I thought we were gonna drown. I looked at my wife and she was silent. And that is not like she must have seen the fear in my eyes and just decided to hold her fears in. So we held hands and we just prayed silently. After what seemed an eternity, which often happens in tropical places, the rain was gone. The clouds were gone. The sky opened up. The sun was shining. We were drenched, trembling, but alive. And then my wife turned to me and said, honey, can we not go camping after this? I said, sure, let's get a hotel. So this was the most beautiful and scariest picnic of my life.
You know, now I want to hear her version of it. Yeah. But I wanted to say, oh, that's so romantic. Yes, it was. Thank you so much. Now listen, I know y'all got a story out there. Somebody out there, you know you got a picnic story. You got a story with a picnic basket in it, if nothing else. Speaking of picnic basket, I have a picnic basket where I have props in it. I like kalimba, flutes, trumpets, noisemakers. And I bought this at the very first Indiana State Fair I attended after I moved here in 1977. It is a gorgeous, I bought it in Pioneer Village, where we all have our Liars contest in August. And this is before the Liars contest. And it was squared off. It had a great rounded handle, and it was just beautiful. And I still have that basket. I look at it every time I leave my house because I take it out of my car and put it in the garage. Like I have my cowtail switch in it. I'll have some noise makers that sound like bones of a skeleton. And the handle broke. Somehow somebody squashed the handle in the trunk. And a friend of mine, one of my parents at Indian Creek School, Karen Hartman, she fixed my basket. There's a square handle now, but it's the most gorgeous picnic basket you ever want to see. And no food has ever been in it. Yeah. Well, now I know if you got a story, we got a blank slip over there. But right now, I'm reaching to my lime green basket. And Sydney Blake is the next one.
Growing up, I always had a very lukewarm at best relationship with it. Somebody says to me, let's go outside, sit amongst insects, and eat food. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And that persisted into adulthood. But in 2014, I decided that I was going to have an indoor picnic with my kids. And we were going to watch the original 3 Star Wars movies. Episodes 4, 5, and 6, if you're keeping track. Now, at this time, they were already familiar with episodes 1, 2, and 3, but they didn't really know the backstory, which was great. Now, at the time, I had 3 children. They were 8, 5, and 4. So the idea of doing a movie trilogy in one go with those 3 kids was a mixture of unfounded optimism and profound ignorance. So I go ahead and I lay out a big sheet in the family room because I know that they're going to make a mess no matter what we eat. We got pizza and chicken nuggets and a bunch of junk food they had no business having in large quantities. And we proceeded to feast while episode 4 starts to play. And somewhere around the time that Han Solo and Luke and Entourage are trying not to get squished in the garbage, I look over and the 4-year-old gone. And somewhere around the time that the rebel forces are making their final attack on the Death Star, talk about stay on target, stay on target. 5-year-old. So now it's just me and my 8-year-old. So we're sitting on the couch and he's soldiering through. And we finish episode 4 and we begin episode 5. Empire Strikes Back. My favorite of the 3. We're getting close to the first duel between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, which is one of the best movie plot reveals in film history. And I look over and that boy's eyelids are getting heavy. Getting closer and closer, minute by minute. I can feel it coming. And I can see him sleeping. So I'm like, this one he's got to see. So we get to the main part. I'm elbowing him, waking him up. You know how it goes. So we get to the point Luke's hand has been cut off. His lightsaber is falling down the shaft. He's sitting there, tears streaming down his face. And James Earl Jones delivers one of the greatest lines in history. No, I am your father. And my 8-year-old goes, and after that, he went to sleep. And I didn't care. For me, that moment presented 2 profound changes in my life. One, it has become one of my favorite fatherhood moments that I'm glad to share with all of you today. And it also profoundly changed my approach to picnics, both indoor and outdoor.
That was hilarious. I could see each scene. I could see each scene. It's just like I have a teacher to recite every line from The Color Purple. It was the same. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm looking at y'all. Some of y'all have not been up here. I'm looking around the room. I know you got a big story. Come on now, you went to Indiana Zoo. Lost your lunch on that big one. Anybody else got a story? Right? This time works. When you hear one story, it reminds you of another one. That's how it goes. Just don't survey. We don't have surveys today? There'll be no prizes. When I reach into my lime green basket, and I'm pulling out the name of Jay Henfield.
It is a magic. And you're right. I was inspired by the story over here. I'm like, I don't have a 50 story. And then I remember the story of what I think is probably the coolest story my dad would give. They always joke and say, you are so honest as a little kid. And I'm like, what about right now? Politician? But anyway, yeah, from a kid's point of view, you should tell the truth, right? That tended to cause a lot of trouble when I was a kid. Not on purpose, For example, my parents went on a date. The babysitter was 15, and 3.5-year-old me gets out, starts walking down the street looking for my parents. And the police stop, who happens to be passing by, and ask this little kid, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, my mom and dad left me." So needless to say, that date was not a picnic for them, right? So, yeah. But anyway, right around, I guess, the same time, my dad was out with him. He had me and my little, it was about 1.5, so just enough to walk and toddle along with you and everything. And I'm like around 3.5, 4, and we have been everywhere with Dad. We're hungry, and I keep saying, "Oh, gas and I want to wash the car. My dad worked 6 days a week. So when he had the chance to run errands, he loved his car. He had a green Challenger. Better than the Ford Pinto that he had before. That we used to always find him sitting on the pump, and then you realize that was the gas. So, but anyway, he's like, so we pulled in, he gets the gas, and then right next door is this car wash manual one, but there's like a little kids play area too, you know? And so he puts us on this bench, he's in this, and you can see, right here, washing the car. We're sitting there, and he's washing the car, he looks over, and he keeps checking in with us, and well, he must have stopped checking in with us for a few minutes. Because the next time he looks over, my little sister and I are having our own picnic with a big bag of cheese. Like we are orange, head to toe. He just drops the brush, right? And he's like, where did you get those? And he says, I didn't even stop to answer. I was too busy doing it, and I just pointed at the store. And he just turned. Because we've stolen, right? That's the only answer, that we have stolen this food. And so he just like, okay, we're going to go in. You can't do that. We're going to apologize. You're in big trouble, mister. And so here we go. He has the cheese puffs in one hand. He has me in the other. And then I have my little sister in the other. And she's orange. And I'm orange. And my dad's mad. He's red. So we go in. And he's like, he brings them up and he puts them on the counter. And he goes, sir, I'm so sorry. This is my son. This is my daughter. My car was watching them. I must have turned my back for too long. And they came in here and they stole these cheese puffs. And he says, no, sir, they didn't. I gave them to him. A little boy walked in here and said, please, mister, can you give us something to eat? My little sister and I are starving. So I guess the moral of the story with me as a kid wasn't always a pitfall, but it sure was fun.
And it's only because you guys are cute. That's the fun of it. Now, I know somebody else out there got those stories there. Now, that's right there. You got all kinds of blank slips. I'm gonna reach to this live green basket. A magical green basket. But our next teller is Debbie.
So, when my daughter was in college, she did a study abroad, and she chose to go to the public. And somewhere in there, was a way she wanted to become a business. So, and at one point, I met all of her friends, saw, and then she said, Mom, we're going somewhere special, but I can't tell you what to get. So I said, okay. So honestly, it was quite a while ago, and I don't think that. But we ended up, anyway, we were right? Yes, right. So, for the line is, but we ended up in the, that's why I said, yeah. And what my daughter knew that I gave myself the present of learning. This is about my and I wanted to learn African customs, but I couldn't find anywhere to learn that. So I ended up learning Cuban. Congo. If you've ever tried, it's really hard because there's this deep. It's not from this. My body doesn't get deep. It's like an heartbeat. But I loved it, and I kind of got a couple of things, like 2 or 3 sentences about things. Anyway, I'm still very passionate about it. So my daughter, me, at the expense who ran some type of museum, and she knew people. So what we did, we went to history, went to the museum, have a whole bunch of stuff, and then she said, okay, so now we're going to go this. We start walking, and
were no lights. And I learned later that sometimes lights just like one day there's lights, the next day there's no light. So there was no light. So as it started to get darker, there was like, you know, you could expect to see light showing up on the street, but it was not like, well, I couldn't quite figure it out. Anyway, if someone else wants to older man, an older man compared to me, and he was quite old. Well, I'm kind of there. Invite the house to go right to the house out of that truck. Meanwhile, people are coming from like the home village, coming through that door and open fences, bringing food. And this man, apparently, he made his own on the top. And he was like, hey, all around. So everybody, I was just and I think this is the picture I never see a thing. He started to play very much like it was a trance. You know what I mean? I saw him with his playing, and I kind of went there with him. And he gave me a drum. He said, play with it. Now, remember, I only know two or three little things. But he just allowed me to do it. He was playing like but I could at least get into that trance. And it's one of the highlights of my life. Yeah, I never ate any, but I got That's wonderful.
I still want to learn how to play this, and I can't do it. I just have a little. I play it and then I sing. Can't do it together. Now, I know that reminds you of the story you wanted to tell. We still got it right there. Samantha's right there. Got a story you want to tell. But hey, magic, I reached the lime green basket. I got another story. Okay, that's how it works. One good story is another. Right now, it's a mess.
told myself I was not going to tell stories tonight, and here we are. The reason being is I am not a picnic person. I will only reluctantly eat at a patio or at a restaurant, and that's if my in-laws request it. However, the closest thing I would say I'd like to a picnic is a good bar. And for those that aren't familiar, in the sorority world in college, a bar dance is where a bunch of sorority girls or their parents pay to rent out a barn so that they can take their coolers full of adult beverages and drink them in said barn. And very simple concept, but and there's food involved, therefore. Right? And that was the first official date my now husband and I had. I remember being so nervous, and I went to like 5 different stores to find a perfect styrofoam cooler. Back in those college days. But we had a great time. We danced, took pictures, you know. We took a hayride at one point in true college fashion. There was a girl crying under a silo. Out by the fire, we made s'mores. It was a great time. Out in the middle of nowhere in Lafayette, Indiana. I lost my wallet, matter of fact, and I did get it back. I don't exactly know what a walk of shame feels like, but I would say it's probably something pretty close to getting out of your car, walking across someone else's cornfield to an empty barn at noon in broad daylight as their family dog is running up to you, and you're like desperately searching for your Coach wristlet in the. I would say it's probably pretty close to that. Anyway, after having
a wonderful night out with my sisters and our friends and our boyfriends and whoever else. One of my sorority sisters came up to me and she said, "So how'd the date go?" Thinking, "Good. Yeah, it was pretty good. I had a good time." I thought, you know. She goes, "Oh no, but you came up to me and you told me you're gonna marry that man." I said, "I did." I felt that way. She goes, "Yeah, you were so excited that when he went up to the buffet, he took a little spoonful of mac and cheese, a little spoonful of pulled pork, and a little spoonful of mashed potatoes, and put it into the perfect proportions on that spoon and fed it to you. And you said, 'That's the man I'm gonna marry.'" So romantic. So moral of the story is, turns out, if I've had enough PPRs, I do like a good picnic.
That's so romantic. I love it. Oh, only in India.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, I remember something like that happened to me. And then still fine. I eat my food. You know, just got my Coke left over there. So I got plenty of time to listen to some more stories. And I could tell by looking at that there's some more stories out there to be told. Okay? That's why I'm gonna harass you for a minute. But I'm gonna reach into this line green basket. Ooh, it's generated another one. It's right now, Chris Gary's gonna come up and tell us the story.
So I grew up in a small town in southern Vermont, and as a kid, we would have lots of picnics. And there were little roadside picnic areas. They've taken them mostly away now because nobody wants to maintain them as far as coming trash cans and stuff. But it was wonderful because it just would fall off the side of the road. There'd be a picnic table, usually a brook or some other body of water. We just would have a blast, having this picnic. It wasn't until many years later that I realized that the reason we had so many picnics and never went to restaurants was because that's what my parents could afford to do with 4 kids. But they were great. And then as we were getting a little bit older, my dad would travel to conferences for work, and twice my older sister and I got to travel with my parents, and we camped from Vermont all the way out to Denver, and then to Phoenix, Arizona, the second time when I was in 3rd grade, and then again when I was in 6th grade. And at the conference, we would stay in a hotel, but all the rest of it was camping and picnicking along the way, and getting to see a lot of the country, which again, travel that way successfully before to do, but created so many good memories along the way. But the picnics that stick with me the most were going to see the Boston Red Sox play. Back before there was such a thing as tailgating, we tailgate. Drive down in the family station wagon from about a 2-hour drive from Vermont, and with a cooler in the back with sandwiches and potato salad and drinks and everything. And back then, you could go to a double header on one ticket. So my dad would always plan it when there was a double header. So basically, for the price of gas and the tickets, we got to see 2 baseball games. And in between the 2 games, we would go out to the car, parked on the side of a busy street in Boston, and tailgate. And all these years later, those are the picnics that still stick with me, and give me fun memories.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know that stuck in her. Okay. I know there's somebody else out there that wants to tell a story. We used to go to Riverview Amusement Park in Chicago. Riverview was a beautiful park. It had all kinds of rides, and I was at the roller coaster. And we would go and stay all day. And because my mother had 3 children, and my aunt had 3 children, we all went together when the big U.S. Steel had a special day. Then we were all packed a lunch. Sure, they had all these little booths. The food looked good, it smelled good, but good luck on using any money you had to go over there and buy anything. Because my mother would have fried chicken, would have made pound cake, would have had all kinds of goodies. And when you finally got a chance to rest, and they were always stationed, remember that little train ride they had in Riverview? They would always be in the center because they could look and see wherever you were. And we would always go back over there if we got hungry and sit down and eat. Before we went back and started out with another roller coaster. Got all in the middle of there. But I'm gonna reach into my line, bring basket. Our next teller is Stephanie Edwards.
That I didn't have a picnic story. And it really is, it's more like a family reunion story because family reunions, of course, you know, in the day when I was young and take picnics with, you know, and it was a big kitchen. So there's always that favorite chocolate cake and somebody else's macaroni and cheese and somebody else's, some people that would stop at KFC and get chicken. But we, as family, and they were the only Black family in Greenwood, Indiana. And the thing that was wonderful about it, you know, it's kind of like a farm. I mean, it was huge, you know, and here's Black children that had never been to a farm, never been out in the city, were fascinated because we were running and all kinds of things. So our family had a cow out there. And they had an outhouse. We had never seen an outhouse out in the middle of someplace. And then there was that cow. And that cow, you know, cows are big, they're like little eyes and things. And the cow kept coming over to look at us. And we was like, yeah. And all of our parents who really weren't surprised about this over there. Watching us freak out about the cow. Well, the cow got tired of us backing off, decided to run after us. Moving across this big plain of land and turn around and get close to the outhouse. And 4 or 5 of us decided to hide from the cow. So we got in the outhouse. We had no idea what kind of things went on in there. And once we got in there, we said, I don't know if we need to be in here. And the person that lived there said, sometimes there's snakes down in there.
Oh my goodness. Oh, but I know y'all thinking about another story. Oh, yeah. That bring back a magical bag. I can tell y'all this. I have an outhouse story, but you don't want to hear. Out there, Calvin Street or what's the big one? Penrock, and I saw the photographer had pictures all framed in barnwood of outhouses. And I have those pictures of outhouses in my bathroom to this very day. Never to go into one. Like the first time I was shown an outhouse, I said, "Oh, I'll just wait till we get home." And we were down in North Carolina. We were there for 2 weeks. I had problems. But now I know you got a story that you're gonna ask Samantha for blanks of paper, and we'll fill it out. And right now, though, we got another a story from, Shannon Sam.
Yeah.
All these stories, made me think of one. So mine is more of a camping story of where you go. They're one and the same. It's amazing what you remember. Think you're younger, you remember actually forever. And as you get older, you just, in some cases, remember the bad things. And I've read that's like from an evolutionary standpoint. The brain makes you remember the bad things so that you know, like the fire's like hot, don't touch it, that sort of thing. But I think you also remember the weird things. So I went camping. I think it was one of my first camping trips when I was 10 or 11. And we went to Brainerd, Minnesota, home of Paul Bunyan. And it was my mom, my brother, who was a year older than me, and my mom's brother and my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. And the three things I remember from that trip are the boys would go fishing, and I didn't want to go, nor did they invite me. And I was inside the cabin with my mother. And we were reading one of her Ladies' Home Journal magazines. And I was like, there's a quiz in here, Mom. I want to give it to you. So I was giving her the quiz, and one of the questions was, have you ever been sexually harassed? And I was like 10 or 11. And I was like, have you ever been? My mom's like, what? And I said, sexually harassed? And she looked at me and she said, yes. And I was like, oh my God, I would love to hear such a good story about STIs. Oh my God. And I go, oh, and I got real serious. And she's like, it's not what you think. She's like, it's when someone discriminates you based on your gender. That can also be considered sex. I was like, disappointed. Like, I didn't even care that someone was like terrible to her because she was a woman. I just thought I was going to hear some juicy story about my mom back in the day. The second story I remember is my brother never had any money, and I was very responsible, so I always had money. And even though we would fight all the time, we went to the gift shop, and I remember like we were supposed to save money, whatever money you could get your hands on as a kid, you just save it for this vacation. And of course, I had money, and he had spent all his on fireworks and candy. And so, like, I was buying all this stuff in the gift shop at the campground, and he didn't have any money, so I bought him a hat. And I remember my uncle telling my mom, like, those two fight all the time, but you can tell they love each other because she buys him things, even when, you know, he spends all his money on garbage. And I remember, like, I overheard this. Like, they weren't telling me this story. I overheard them talking about me. And I remember being like, money gives you power. You can buy people things, like, you own them. And then finally, the last thing I remember is we were back at the cabin, and I was supposed to make popcorn. And I said, Mom, where's the butter? And she said, oh, no, I didn't bring any. And I was like, that's okay. We'll figure it out. And so I'm so important as a 10-year-old making popcorn for everyone to snack on at dinner tonight. And as soon as my brother, I remember I made it like in a garbage bag. We were camping. And he put some in his mouth, and then he's like, he acted like he was dying. And my mom's like, what did you do to the popcorn? I said, well, we didn't have butter, so I doubled the salt. Thinking that would be like fine. It's not fine. So my brother passed away like not a few years later in a motorcycle accident, sadly. He just a couple of months shy of his 21st birthday. And I remember just these little fleeting things, like that hat was proof that I was nice to him. And then that salt in the popcorn was proof that I also was trying to say really kill him. Our lives in the story. We don't have enough time.
Anybody else want to fill my lime green basket? Kind of Look at that table back there. Mary or one of you been over here. I know you got a store. All right. Okay, we're not that kind of place. We're welcome, please. Okay, we welcome any stories we can get. I want to remind you that our next topic is chaos. Woo, Lord, I don't know chaos. Yeah. I was doing physical therapy. For my knee, but apparently I did not do enough of because I'm still sitting in this walker. And they would talk about one of their patients who every time they came to do something, she would go, "Ooh, child." That's my new anthem for 2025. Ooh, child. Chaos will be at Grand Junction Brewing Company at 181st and Meridian in Westfield in August. Okay. It says July, okay?
August 20th.
August 20th.
It's my birthday. I won't be here.
Oh.
You can give me money tonight. It's okay. Don't worry. Yeah.
Don't forget, tomorrow night, Freetown Village present conversations at Indiana Landmark, 6 o'clock. And if you would like to go online, www.freetownvillage.org, and register. It's a free event. We're talking about female philanthropy. Okay. But I digress because my basket is no longer empty. We got another teller. And our teller this time is Nancy Scott. Come on over there. I'll be thinking.
I was camping with my friend at a national park. And it was so beautiful, great trees, great events. Lots of people packing, lots of people. And we had our picnic. Peanut butter and juice, crackers, and things like that. You know, enough to have a fun time and enjoy the surroundings. And then we set up our tent and brought on in. Yeah, kind of a light sleeper. But it was such great fresh air. And you're getting a lot of drinking around in the campground. And it had been kind of rowdy, but things were quieting down. And I heard some twomping on loud, you know, big camping boots that they wear. And so I thought, well, I guess they don't want to go all the way out to the John, so they're just going in the bushes. So, okay, I kept hearing that, all right. And then I kept hearing this. I thought, well, you know, a lot of these campers, they're probably not used to being out in the outdoors and they caught cold. They are often loud with bad colds. And then I tried to go to sleep again, and then after a while I woke up and there was this big rumbling, like rumbling stomachs. And I thought, golly, they must have really had a hard time eating picnic food. They just had gotten sick, you know, and their stomachs are distressed tonight. And, you know, before we got in the tent, we put everything away in the car, we got in the igloo cooler and put everything back away, the honey and everything. Then all of a sudden I heard this
noise. And it was a big noise. The things kind of rattling. But it sort of sounds like somebody pushing the car. What's going on? And it kept sounding like that. I thought, that couldn't be. But it just kept going back and forth. And I peeked out. But it was pitch black. You couldn't see anything. And then I heard this shattering of the window. I thought, surely nobody would do this in the middle of the night. And we waited until the first light was coming out. Yeah. I peeked out of the tent. And now there was a mama bear and a little cub. And they had broken into that little station wagon. They smelled that honey. And they the cub had crawled in and brought it right down out onto the ground. And he said, we got to get out of here. But they kept being there. And, you know, my dad had taught me years before, you do not mess with a mother and her cubs when we were camping out. Some guy got up and hit them some water. Don't ever do that. So they sort of wandered away for a little while. And, you know, I like to get my tent fixed all nice and rolled up just right. We grabbed that thing up by the stakes, ran out there, threw everything in the car, out of the car, tore out of there, went to the ranger station to report the bears. And they were taking all these calls from all these other people. You know, it's sort of like Bears, Bob and Tom went to camp one. It was Virginia and Fred and Alice went to camp two. So we went to nearest town and went to an insurance agent and said, bears broke into our car. And he said, sure. Come out and look. And he comes out to look. And, you know, there's lots of dusty roads back in the parks. So the car was kind of dirty. And he looked on the top and there were all these paw prints. He said, yep. You know, when I was a kid in kindergarten, we used to have nap time and put our little breasts down. And I never could go to sleep until I heard the teddy bear's picnic. And I thought, well, this time I got myself right in the middle of the teddy bear's picnic. Around the room. Anybody? I don't want to leave anybody out.
I'm just gonna tell. I can't read them.
Oh, okay. Don't forget. July 24th, 7:30 to 9. Here are stories of life and afterlife of incarceration. At First Friends Church on 3030 Kessler Boulevard, East Drive. And the storyteller will be Here Are Stories regular, Charles Hackett. That will be a good program. Don't forget, Freetown Village, work on their own, Thursday, August 14th, from 8 to 9 p.m. And Saturday, August 16th, from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m.
That's part of the Fringe Festival.
Indy Fringe Festival.
Part of the Fringe Festival. Okay.
Jay and I will be hosting the preview night,
All right.
which is August 13th at the Athenaeum. And hopefully you'll go, Chap, and not get the runaround like you did last time.
for the sport. And our next session topic is, everybody remember?
Yeah.
At Grand Junction Brewing Company at 181st and Meridian Street. Now, look around, I don't want to leave nobody out. But you know, one time we had finished all the judges, and one person came up and told another story. So I don't want to leave anybody out now. Going once. Gotta run. One good story leads to another. Again, I'd like to thank Samantha and Shannon and Stanley and our judges, scorers, and who just come out every month. I come out to have something good to eat. I had a Mexican Coke tonight. It was good. I haven't drunk it all up yet, but I have to take it off. And I mostly come out to hear some new fantastic stories. So is this a number, a name going in my bag? Oh, no, I thought I had a new skeleton. Oh, sorry. Okay. No problem. Da, 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 da. Can we remind you that in January, in our new season, that we're going to get some of the winners of our story slam, and they're going to present. So, you know, let's say you were just absolutely mom tonight. Now, our third place winner is Sydney.
Yay.
Our second place winner is Jen. And our first place winner is Jay. Will pay you tonight, I think. And I would like to take the picture so we can have you on Facebook. And I want you to know again, I had a good time. I went all that perky when I first came. I thought I'd be a margarita, but no, I didn't get one. But you have cheered me up immensely, and I had a great time, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.